yeah, that's a good question. I can bring that along into the presentation maybe, and you know, that's one of the big questions when it comes to innovation management. So you have all the kind of ideas of having a corporation and, you know, long-term planning and exploitation of what you have, but then how do you bring in the new stuff and how does it work? So great, thank you very much. So the idea now is that I will ask a few questions and we'll see if we can come up with some answers together. And I hope to end up in a pretty, for me at least, novel ideas about entrepreneurship and going from atom from bits to atoms, and I will explain what that means. So the first question: why do we have firms? So in the 19th century, there wasn't many big firms. So basically, like a bank was 3 people, 4 people running it, and then they had a lot of contract with external partners. You had other kind of forest companies also have contractors coming in and like that. So building big corporations is pretty new phenomenon. So anyone have a decent explanation why this happened in the late?
Railroads.
Sorry?
Railroads.
Exactly. Why railroads? Why is that important?
I just was thinking late 18th century, you need a lot of people, contract labour is not terribly reliable. The railroads, maybe it was that.
Okay.
It's a lucky guess. It was either that or an American conspiracy.
Industrial Revolution, transport. Yeah, so it started with the railroads in the U.S. that you can have mass distribution. So before mass production, it was this mass distribution. Because suddenly it makes something in one place and they can distribute it to a lot of other places. And then they started with the mass manufacturing as well. So that connected. But hey, you can do this without building a big corporation. So the economists try to explain why they had to have an organization. So not a market. So the other thing could be like a market. So you just one person, then you hire people all the time. So why do you want them in your own organization? Why employees?
Culture. So you want to have a sense of belonging around the community that you're forming?
Yes. So that comes later, but that's very important in these large corporations to build this culture. So the economic answer is transaction costs. So it's too much hassle to look for the people all the time, and also actually run the culture. So you actually build something together, and it's even then more costly to try to find someone else to get into that culture. So transaction costs. So that could be looking for a person making something for you or selling something for you. So instead you set up a sales force within the organization, for example. So we bear that in mind. So why do we have large R&D departments? So after this, a few decades later, you see many of these large corporations set up R&D departments. This one we know so today, like Bell Labs and Zero Park.
Keeping ahead of the competition.
Keeping ahead of the competition. So that's one suggestion that is really good. It's true because they saw that people could or companies could compete with new technology. But why didn't they buy the new technology set? Why did they set up in their own organization?
Because intellectual property is valuable.
They wanted the secrecy. Intellectual property is valuable. True.
Product life cycle continuity, because they need to have a product and in order to innovate, and because normally their products have a life cycle that they actually go, and then after a while they lose market, so they have to reinvent themselves. They reinvent their products.
So you're all right. Yeah.
company which is doing this and you're going with a new technology, then you want to be at that you've got the legacy of your existing system. So you want it to be compatible.
Yeah. So they want this kind of to hedge their bets, of course. So that they will compete with new technology. But it's also, you know, to build up your own. It's also because of transaction costs that especially, you know, trying to find the people all the time to build a new innovation project is too hard. It's easier to have everyone in-house, and then you collaborate around a project. So this is the answer. So now we have the internet and digital tools. And that, you know, as an economist, we say that what happens is it's so much easier to find people out there. It's so much easier. So the transaction cost has lowered, you know, substantially. So what happens then with the firm and yeah, especially the firm? Or what?
Well, it's no longer so economically sensible to maintain a large labor force.
Exactly. So in many cases, you can find the people outside of your firm pretty easily, and temporarily or in long-term kind of contracts, but you maybe don't need everyone within the boundaries of the firm. So what we see is all these companies. This is very usual kind of presentation by innovation gurus showing how the world is changing. So you have all these platform companies changing the world. I like to have this kind of transaction cost perspective when we look at this. So Uber, for example, they contract all these taxi companies, and through the internet and digital tools, it's a very cost-efficient way of doing this, and then you can actually add some even more kind of services through this digital platform for the consumer. So you see that having the perspective of transaction costs, this makes a little bit more sense that most of these companies are pretty small when what they're doing, and then they have a lot of people out there helping them make the service. So you see all these kind of most popular media owner creates no content. Fast-growing banks have no actual money. And this, this is App Store apparently, so what is App Store?
Market to sell your apps.
And market to sell your apps. So why don't Apple make these themselves?
It's easier to sell because they need a big workforce in order to develop all of this. While by providing a platform, they can.
But they lose out money. You know, they cannot get all the revenues. They have to share. That's not their core business. Yeah. No, I mean they're apparently not Uber. They, you know, it would be strange to be both Uber and Apple. Yeah.
You can click the ticket on all the apps that are sold through the market without much risk.
You're right. I think thinking about this as an R&D department also makes sense. To instead of sitting there and coming up with new ideas, they can actually outsource the R&D department. So they provide the network and the possible customers, and then you can use their platform. So normally, what an R&D department does is to generate ideas and select ideas. And you have all these kind of stage gate models. So you have like you take some of your technology portfolio one step further, and then you have go no go decisions, and in the end you have this kind of pipeline where you get a few technologies out of the R&D department into the large company. Here you have something different. So what happens in the App Store? Who comes up with ideas? Individuals, people out there, whoever, or corporations that could also set up that. And who selects their ideas? Consumers, you and I. We you know, if we really like something, we even kind of market it. We give it a thumb up, or we kind of promote it. And why is this so interesting compared to the normal kind of R&D process? It's quicker. It's quicker.
More efficient.
More efficient. Cheaper, definitely.
As a consumer, you get to guide the market because I know when I was younger, it was like take this or leave it.
Yes.
The products you were offered were you didn't have much control over. Now, one feels like one has more control over what one can take and leave.
Exactly. You as a consumer, you are more in control and you have more power selecting what's on the market at the end. I will go back to all the. Sorry about that. So this is the basic model, or this is like the R&D model that was in the 30s. So I think Henry Ford said you can have any color of a Model T as long as it's black. So the choice was really small, limited, and then you know the manufacturers start to understand that shit, we failed. We deliver a product and no one wants. You know, it costs a lot. So we try to do these kind of market surveys. So they really try to understand what does the market want, and they have surveys and they have stage gates. So they do these surveys the closer they get to the actual launch. But still, it's they make the decision. Going back to the App Store, you have you don't have that problem anymore because you leave it out to the consumers. So you actually can get consumers to select, and then you organize it that way. So you just need a lot of different experiments out there. Does that make sense? Yeah. So this is the Opera House, and it's Minecraft, the Swedish startup sold to Microsoft for a lot of money. And Minecraft, they just built the platform, and then the people out there who use it, they generate the content, right? But not only that, they also open up their software. So you have developers out there and creating a new algorithm. So one, for example, you can download an algorithm that takes away the pixels. So suddenly you get a much nicer view or a nicer picture if you want that, for example. So they have also built this kind of open community where it's open for the customers and users to be involved. So now we're coming back to large bureaucratic organizations, and if you have a model like this, the company does not need to innovate that much. The users are the ones that innovate, and the users will also be the ones that select which innovations are of interest. So this we call, I took a course at Harvard University. So I stayed 6 months at MIT, and I took a course at Harvard during that time. And Michael Tushman, who is a well-known strategy professor, he was so excited about this. Really like how this is changing the whole concept of the firm. Lower the transaction costs, and then also the whole idea of innovation. How you can set up new forms of innovation. And it's called the hybrid model, where you get both exploitation and exploration at the same time. And you don't have to do it in-house. You can leave some for the users out there. This is a threadless t-shirt company. Have you heard about that? Yes, it's a big success. They make t-shirts with prints, and you know, they don't make the t-shirts. They just print. They just buy the t-shirts and they make the prints. They don't even make the prints. The users make the prints. So it's contents. It's a challenge out there. So they have challenges where you can make your own design, and then some win. And the people that select the design, they some of them even pay up front. So you have a company that continuously innovates, and you have people out there buying their product before it's being produced. So going back to Model T and how much the T for it and how much they had to bet that particular product was a success compared to this model is totally different. So this is, the company doesn't have to take any risk at all. It's all out there. And so some, people say, yeah, but this is only t-shirts, and this is only an open source software. Yeah, and maybe, encyclopedia, you can create something like that. Or, maybe only intangibles, like intangible products. But what about physical products? How do you do it there? And we start to see that in these kind of experiments. So one startup in Boston area called Local Motors, they have created similar to Threadless, a place where users or hobbyists, enthusiasts of car making can go and design their own cars. And they do that in this kind of digital models. And not all the parts. Some parts they have to buy in because it's otherwise it would be too expensive. And then they have these contests where they design and they select the different parts of the car. And here you see one of the first crowdsourced cars, the Rally Fighter.
Did you design that one?
I wish. No, I just looked at it. No, but it's. I'm not sure if the startup itself, Local Motor, is a big success yet. But the experiment is there, and I met some developer from Ford, and they were really excited about this and thinking about how Ford could do a little bit of this. Yes. Yes, I've gone through that. So this is from MIT Sloan Review. So this is just summing up what we've been talking about. So you have the idea generation here, and you have idea selection. So this is very basic what the innovation processes are about, and everything is internal. It's the traditional R&D effort. You can have the selection external. This is these kind of contests where you show different like a design, architectural design. You show different designs, and then they you see who what gets selected. Here you idea generation. So this is like what NASA is doing. So you have a technical problem, space poop. Have you heard about that? So it's like they have a problem, if an astronaut gets stranded at the moon, it will take 2 or 3 days to get back, and in the spacesuit. And so they know how to get him back or her, but they don't know what to do with the poop. So they had a big idea contest. Can anyone come up with a solution that is feasible? And yeah, so they do a lot of that. So if you want to look at one very particular innovation tournament, is the space poop. And then we have this kind of where both idea generation and idea selection is communities or markets, as in App Store. And as I said, local markets we see when startup is trying to do this from the beginning. So I think it's really hard to pivot into this. So when I talk to startups, I tend to say that if you believe in this, you should try to do this early on, so you have that in your DNA. Because I think it will be hard to start to create a community and like that afterwards. So it's early on that you have to start with that. Or I haven't seen anyone that creates late process. Any questions? So I will just say a few more words, and another. Why this is so important, going back to App Store. So we understand the ID selection and ID generation, but there are so many unknown problems out there. There's so many like if you're an R&D facility. You didn't know that mountain biking was going to be a trend, or even that people use your bikes for mountain biking. It's crazy, right? And in these, it was like 8 hippies in California going downhill. And they went to the manufacturers and said that, hey, we need better tires, better brakes. And the manufacturers say, hey, you're eight people, it's not a market, right? But we see this in a lot of places that's exactly how a market starts. It's the beginning of a trend. And you can never find that in a market survey. You can never understand that if you're not there. And of course, not all of them, of these experiments will become these kind of big trends, but some will. And this kind of App Store way of organizing it, makes a lot of experiments going on. And some will become an Airbnb or whatever it will be. So these kind of the unknown problems, to come close to them and have them address them is interesting.
The mining industry is doing a whole series of those right around Australia at the minute.
Okay.
I'll be at one at Wollongong tomorrow, and they're building a virtual laboratory because finding more resources is getting harder. They're having to go deeper and cost more, so they're looking at new approaches to mining, and so they're doing it in a virtual simulation approach first, and then they will be developing. So
they will actually test it and be in a live setting. Yeah.
It's interesting they're following actually more.
Yeah, the users and try to understand the needs before they develop something.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, we start to see more and more of this, the test beds and the living labs. And
it's a living lab.
Yeah. Yeah. So just to wrap this up, also it's what I'm trying to promote here is to think about the users. They are using it, and they have particular needs for that. And often manufacturers are do something to sell it, and then you maybe get more kind of incremental in your way of thinking. You don't you want it to be pretty similar but yet different. But when you a user is more the functionality, you really need that those brakes, because otherwise you can die when you're going downhill. So we also talked about that is tacit knowledge. So having that need going downhill is something that's hard to explain. So you go to someone and say, we need better brakes. Yeah, but why? So that is very hard to explain. So sometimes you really need the users to be involved in the development process. We see this right now in so many different industries where you have all these experiments going on, and here are some examples in the civilian drones, how they experiment the cryptocurrency. That's it from me. Thank you.
sort of take the mountain bike example. Say if those users discovered they needed thicker or better tires, and then they prompted either themselves went to manufacture better mountain bikes, or they prompted a manufacturer to manufacture mountain bikes. Wouldn't it always move from user innovation into manufacturer innovation? Yeah.
So there's like two ways of diffusing this. So one is user entrepreneurship. So they set up their own bikes, or companies creating bikes, or the actual manufacturer will start to understand that, oh, this is the beginning of a trend. We will try this.
Also, that's not considered user driven then.
So this is more kind of like the user creating the actual first innovation, and then to diffuse it, it could take different ways, or these two ways. Did I answer your question? Yeah. And the third way is peer-to-peer. So actually, in the mountain bikes, there was this guy that created a lot of bikes and kind of gave it away to his peers. And we see it in software a lot, that you program and it's open source and like that. So it's three ways of diffusing these.
How can you promote the culture of innovation and innovating within the society, the things like that Silicon Valley is doing, or Israel is doing, even like Sweden is doing? How can we promote that in Australia?
Yeah. So it tends to, Silicon Valley is very special, right? But there you can, what I think and what happened in Stockholm is that some parts of it, we start to understand how important it is with proximity to have this kind of denseness and understand what we need to do. So in Stockholm, there's been this kind of very low amount of co-working spaces and meeting places, and that has really been positive for the innovation ecosystem. I get the feeling that Sydney is really
you say very low
amount of co-working space. So we have increased that
to get together.
Yeah, so we have increased that the last years. More meeting places and more possibilities to meet up the different actors in the innovation system. So I think we can learn from each other. I don't know exactly what Australia or Sydney should bring. I guess you have to do some kind of analysis. Are you low on entrepreneurship, or is it low on R&D spending, and then decide what to focus on. But I'm very positive. What I've seen today with Sydney, how entrepreneurship. There's a lot of people out there concerned about that and really want to get going.
Pete, can I take you back to the question I think you raised right at some of it? How do you manage entrepreneurship, innovation in a large bureaucracy?
Yes.
Because I'm thinking of the universities, but there's just so much going on, but it is totally all over the place.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of research on this. So there you have this explore and exploit. So you have to start to understand that different cultures to be faster and better to exploit what we already have. That is a culture and a skill, and then to explore new avenues, then you need something new. So let me take an example like the Swedish big banks. They're pretty big companies, and they have understood that fintech is coming. So they want to have innovation. So they have put up some kind of accelerators and somehow like innovation program within the company. So they ask their employees. This is good, but that is it doesn't shift the culture. It doesn't shift the strategy. So what I see lacking there is that the leadership needs to understand this question and develop a strategy where they understand that there could be disruptive innovation, and they could just lose a lot of what they're doing right now. And then they should start to, okay, if there is this disruption in mortgages, should we do? And maybe they should not do everything themselves. Maybe like investing in small startups could be one way of doing this. So in universities, I talked to Harvard leadership there, and they were really they realized that there was this edtech revolution going on, or change, and so they also they know about disruptive innovation. They have courses on that. So what they did was taking part of these kind of MOOC platforms. So they're being involved in the new development. So if there was this kind of big change, big shift, that they could be part of that.
The culture of learning.
I think the trouble with universities too is the new system needs multi-domain knowledge, and the universities are so focused on the BA, the Masters, and the PhD in this narrow stream, which really restricts. Because I was at UNSW and I applied to do this thing, and it was business, and it was creative, and it was commercial, and they went, oh, we haven't got anyone who can supervise because it's across too many things. Yeah. So I went to UTS because they've got the flip up. So they've got that introvert, and I can just do it myself.
Yeah.
That was good.
What you're doing now is it's an experiment in Stockholm or Sydney School of Entrepreneurship. It's really novel, and I guess it's really changing the bureaucratic culture of many universities. So that's I guess a bet that they're making now that could help.
James?
Yeah, I suppose it's the same question, but on like an area or geographical basis. How do we go about trying to foster like innovation ecosystems? So I work for a council. I hear you meant to think about like products and services that might be in demand in an area, and think about the specializations. Like, for example, in St. Leonard's we have some health companies. We've got a big hospital there, and there's an education precinct with the TAFE. How can we build upon that?
Great question.
Can I ask, is it consumer driven, or are you still trying to keep control? Because as someone who negotiates with my local council, I find it really annoying that you guys want to stay in control. I think getting the ideas, the consumer, the app store, asking your constituents what they want. And
no, but this is, I don't know if you're a little bit provocative, but you're asking something that I think is super interesting. So there is this trend, policy labs. So many have policy labs, and what they try to do is to go to the actual clients or citizens. So and ask them what is your problem with the financial supervisory authority, and then to bring that into the change of the policy. So having these kind of interactive processes, could probably the government, I'm part of the government, we could be even better at. So for example, in Stockholm, we have a really thriving fintech industry. But many of the startups, they complain about the supervisory authority because it's expensive to apply for licenses, and sometimes it's like sending in the application into a black hole, and you don't know what's happening. It will take like 9 months before you get an answer. So we set up like this kind of design thinking process where you had 80 fintech companies meeting officers from the authority, and it came up all these kind of problems they had. And then the officers could say, oh yeah, but that's a great problem. We can actually solve that pretty easily. And they could start to understand which problems were the greatest. So getting these people in there is probably a great idea.
Host privilege. Are we punch drunk on the notion that innovation is good? So, if we have, let's say we had a more socialist agenda, I'm just saying, we're on the North Shore, so we probably don't, but is there a point where, user-driven innovation gets too micro, and it's like, you know what, everyone can jolly well drive the black T Ford because that'll get you from A to B and that's enough. You know, you don't have to have the stereo or whatever. So is there a point when the cost of innovation is actually a negative, diminishing rate of return?
That's a great. So I thought you were going to go for the kind of innovation could be negative. You can create a gun and you can shoot someone or whatever. But no. So yeah, I haven't thought about that. I think that the small stuff we see that users do could also end up in the big stuff. So we know the airplane industry was a big community of hobbyists around the world trying to develop this flying machine, and they thought it was impossible. And then the Wright brothers got the small details right in the end. We have Linux outcompeting Microsoft. So I think you see that some of these users are these kind of small stuff, but collectively they can really be a force that makes it better. For example, patient innovations. So there you have patients coming up with cancer therapies. So you have so many patients out there, and they are experimenting, and sometimes they get it right. And of course, you have to go back to your doctor and evidence-base it and make it really certain that it's good stuff. But when we go through the actual therapies in, for example, cystic fibrosis, I think it was 5 out of 12 that came from patients. So no, I think that there's so much positive in innovations. Good question. Yes.
Just a quick response on that. So my specific work is entirely in the open source world, and one of the best things about that is when you have everybody working on it on their own, you can take the major project and make it your own and make whatever tweaks you need on it. One of the best things with that, with having so many people working on innovating it, is that more things get tried at once, and then more things are able to fail hard and fail fast. And so in doing that, we're able to produce, well, you were just saying with the example of Linux versus Microsoft, we're able to produce a much larger ecosystem based on that. And then because of all of that, not to go too far into the Linux thing, that's too easy for me to do, but because of that, you get an overall more stable product, an overall more secure product, and an overall a product that works for more applications and is more usable.
Yeah, look, I was just it was devil's advocate because instead of 1,000 people, trying to vary an open source code, maybe you say, look, there's only really 20 bright ones. Let them play around, and the other 980 should not waste their time. Fail fast. It's like, at what point do you fail too many? Failing fast is good, you learn, but at what point is the cost of so many people failing just a waste of their time, of their effort? They could be doing other stuff instead.
Yeah, certainly. And with that, many large projects have their sort of steering committee and the ones that are doing the bulk of the work. But then with everybody else doing everything, sort of as fingers coming off, it's able to keep it coming back on and going on the same track. Because that small group of people, frankly, can't keep up the same development.
And I think you've got the weighing of an economy of scale versus waste. And with the world at the moment, we're resource conscious. So tailoring things so that people get exactly what they want, so you don't get a waste. Is viable in this day and age as well.
Okay. Yes.
I'm going to follow that with another negative-ish question. So I used to work for a startup, have a lot of thoughts about the startup industry in Australia. But lately there's been quite a few articles coming out of TechCrunch about how the future belongs to big corporates. The reasoning, the logic behind that is you look at the upcoming technologies, AR, VR, drones, unmanned vehicles, they all need big data. And big data at the moment is controlled by companies like Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, which is those articles' logic behind why the future belongs to big companies and not startups. And startups took off because of the it's the post.com, the post-internet wave. That created Facebook, and then everyone jumped onto the startup bandwagon. And there's this underlying trend coming up lately about how startups, the whole startup craze is about to die off. What are your thoughts on that? And if you sort of agree with it, then the fact that Australia is only now just jumping onto the innovation hub trend, is that too late?
Yeah, that's a great question. So every now and then there comes these kind of, there's no, I think the argument is valid that some of these technologies, scale is important. You have really the networks effect, not only having like Facebook network effects in having a lot of people using it, actually the technology in itself, drive big data. So that's valid. But I guess that there's still this, that the bigger they get, the harder it will be to change. And like suddenly, I have this Instagram and no one really understands why, or Snapchat, I'm too old to understand why did that take off. And then you have something else. Yeah.
Snapchat's gonna go away too.
Yeah, but so why Facebook? Why did they survive? So no, I'm not. I think more that these kind of app stores, that some platform providers, if they are smart, they can create an ecosystem that are very effective. So it's easy for others to join them, and then they will be able to survive for a longer time. Otherwise, I think it will be as it's been the last 100, 200 years that you see this kind of change, that you will have kind of disruption coming from the outside, because there are so many kind of problems when you have an organization to change and adapt. It's more an organizational problem than the actual technology. It means if you have the best technology, you will not be able to understand exactly what these new trends are.
Can I butt in on the specific issue of data? So in case people hadn't heard, one of the phrases is data is the new oil. So it's the people who control the access and know how to process it the most, like the Googles and the Facebook. They're the guys that are going to be the Shell and the BP and the Exxon of the internet age. So that's one thing. And to socialize it again, and don't listen to I'm pretty broad on politics, but to socialize it was why the NSIN, one of their policies is to push government at all levels to be open data. So Queensland and New South Wales state, you can go onto their portals and they have open data sets on all sorts of stuff. That's why councils are still to catch up. I want to be able to go to somewhere and know exactly how many rubbish collections are done per hour so that I can design a startup to do something with rubbish. I don't know what. Or how many bicycles go past a certain point, or whatever it is. That should be, we should all have open access to that to try and democratize some of what you're saying.
I agree with that. I think, Google, Facebook will be the bigger one. But the thing is that there is a shift as well as the way we include all the data, because I think, especially what happened right now in the cryptocurrency space, where all our inputs or data is being decentralized now. So meaning to say nobody owns your information kind of thing, because it's being scattered openly in the market or in the ecosystem. So this is what's happening right now in the space of blockchain. So I think this is one good thing that's happening right now, because I think that the government and the whole community seeing the effects of a closed or commercialized information that's being handled by big corporations. But now there's a shift that's happening, which everybody can share the information in any way you want. So yeah,
you're right. And I also believe that if it becomes too much of a power, I think you will have national kind of almost like in China, but more like Sweden will have. You have to be a Swedish company to have all that data or whatever, because that would be that would be ways of controlling for these kind of big companies not get all the data.
So do you think the startup trend will continue?
Yes.
Yeah, but so you know that trust in the U.S. So it was the same with the railways and all that. You had these kind of Rockefellers and you know being these kind of robber baron, right? And then you have the antitrust laws. So you always have like governments being able to set up different kind of rules to try to foster these kind of market mechanisms. So I think it will probably be the same here. That if it turns out that these kind of big data is too much of a you get a monopoly, then there will be probably the government will try to stop that. Yeah, so the entrepreneurship craze, I don't know. It's interesting because it's many different places in the world. So I'm so amazed by Sweden that it used to be. I told someone that you want to be the middle manager at Ericsson. You went home to your mother and your mother-in-law and said, "Oh, I have a great position," like that. But now at dinner tables in stock community, you should say that I'm an entrepreneur, or if you say that, that's like more, you know, status. It's more interesting than working for the big corporations. And it's a huge shift in how people, you know, plan their lives and like that. So at least where I come from, I think this is just the beginning. That then it's always about, you know, the digital tsunami has made it possible for create new business models. So it's a really great time to be an entrepreneur right now, if you especially in digital technologies, definitely. So that you know comes and goes, I guess, different technology waves.
Surely isn't the fact that, as you started with, the fact that transaction costs of labour hire have now come down so low, isn't that going to mitigate against big corporations getting bigger and continuing?
I think about like App Store. So this is speculations. I don't know, but if we go down that kind of track and try to think that through, so maybe they don't grow bigger. So Apple stays almost the same, but their economy grows. So they get more apps into their App Store. Yeah. I'm not sure if they will turn. Let's say like this. There's one thing is the data. That's very good to have. Be big to have a lot of data there, but also to this network effect when it comes to the platforms like Uber and Facebook and like that. Then you have two-sided platforms, and there's a lot of network effect. It's really hard for someone else to become the next Uber because you have to really if you start from scratch, it's so much harder. So one of the best ways of gaining monopoly is to control this kind of network effect. So there's a lot of network effect in a digital economy. Did that make sense? I know I wasn't completely clear, but yes, it's.
How do you promote private investment in startups in Sweden?
So we have grants. so we have actually like free money that you can get from the government, and it's like 50,000 euros. Yeah. So that's.
What about if people that they have money want to invest? How do we promote them? Because there is a shift in like here. What I hear is that we don't have that kind of attitude that it is worth investing in innovation. While in the US or in Israel, like the environment is that people think that the innovation will pay off as an investment.
So do you mean like business angels, or do you mean
That's
more?
correct, yes.
Yeah,
People
not professional venture capitalists or more. Kind of
even those, yes,
okay.
even those capitalists that they see the benefits of investing in innovation that will pay off eventually in a year, 2, 5 years, in order to support them.
So one thing, when you start to have some technology entrepreneurs that made it and have a lot of money, they seem to be very prone to invest in others. So the last years we have a lot of these kind of unicorns. The startups that go really well, and most of them they start to get some money already during their kind of journey, and they start to hand out money. So I met one guy from SoundCloud that started SoundCloud, and this was a few years back. He had already invested in 8 other technology companies. So how do you start that kind of positive circle? I'm not sure, but when it goes, starts, it's so much easier to see how important that is. So I guess in Israel they use a little bit of their diaspora in the US. That might be one thing of connecting to other kind of ecosystems that are more prone to invest.
Well, you get all those middle managers at Ericsson to leave their jobs and spend their money.
They don't earn that much.
We're going to, unfortunately, I've been given a wrap up, so